Hello and welcome to RadioTimes.com's Bake Off recap and review show. I'm Sarah Doran.
I'm Paul Jones.
And we're here to talk about all things cake for week 2 in the tent. It was, as I've suggested, Paul, Cake Week.
Cake Week.
Noel Fielding dressed up as Marie Antoinette at the start of the episode.
He did, and later looking like Elvis is making a comeback as well.
Completely, those sideburns. We were talking about this, Francis and I were talking about this after week 1 of Bake Off. We're not sure how we feel about the sideburns, but we love Noel. We think he's a fantastic presenter.
I think he's working it.
He's working it, indeed. And the bakers were working it, working up a storm in very hot temperatures to kick off Cake Week. And they started off with some rather nice, tempting tray bakes. I don't know about you, but watching these, I was very, very hungry. Yeah,
it's difficult because it's sort of just, it's either have you had your tea or are you just about to have your tea. Either way, well, a cake after tea is a good thing, I guess. But if you don't have it in, what do you do? I
know, do you nip to the shop during the ad breaks?
That's what I kind of want to, I wish there was a way we could survey this, because I feel like corner shop owners are getting a bit more trade on a Tuesday night now in between the ad breaks. Like you're just nipping out, getting a cake and getting the kettle on in the meantime.
Do you do that? Do you nip out and get a cake and leave the kettle on? Leave us a comment below and let us know so Paul can get the answers. He's so desperately
Yes, I need this data, yes.
Speaking of the tray bakes though, Dan made this absolutely beautiful kind of Black Forest Gatto style tray bake, and in return got the first Hollywood handshake of the series. Now we'll talk a little bit more about the handshakes later on, but do you think Dan's was deserved, Paul?
So it looked great in the sense that was very precise chocolate work. It was very neat. And I actually love a Black Forest Gatto because my mum used to make this amazing one, which I was just thinking last night while I was watching it. I need to get her to make one of those because it's been years. It is a very 70s thing. So I'm sure, it sounded like it was delicious. It looked really good. It still aesthetically was not my favourite. I liked rolls. Just sort of neat, quite, as Paul said, it was like the finger sandwiches on a afternoon tea at Claridge's, somewhere like that. So I really liked the look of that, and it sounded like it tasted good as well. But yeah, Dan's was clearly delicious, and it was neat and precise. So I think it probably did deserve it. What I thought was interesting about the tray bakes as well is you kind of, when they said tray bakes, I was thinking, you know, a big tray of brownies, lovely.
Flapjacks.
Actually, what they were doing looked a lot more like Bake Off creme de la creme.
Completely.
It was sort of that very precise patisserie shop window kind of stuff. A lot of it, wasn't it?
Kind of, yeah, like really high end. With the tray bakes, I was just really pleased that Terry's worked out okay, because throughout this whole episode, and I think throughout last week in general as well, I think myself and Twitter in general were really worried anytime Terry was like, Terry's aiming high, Terry's taking a risk. It's like, please Terry, don't put my blood pressure up. I'm terrified.
But then that's what people love as well, isn't it? It's that he's trying all this random new stuff, and the judges seem to be quite good with it as well. That, you know, they like the fact that he's challenging himself. But yeah, I do feel like Terry will be a loss to a lot of people if and when he goes.
Yeah. A terrible loss.
Oh yeah, that's very good.
For a terrible
pun. A terrible pun, yes.
Moving on to risky and new things, we were introduced to Le Gâteau Vert, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Le Gâteau Vert de Claude Monet.
De Claude Monet, or as I have called it, Monet, Monet, Monet.
Very good.
To continue with the terrible puns, Paul, had you ever heard of this cake before it showed up on
I had not, but I tell you what, I love the look of it, and I really fancy that cake. Like, sort of soft, what do you call it, Genoese sponge?
Yeah,
Like, pistachio's good, green good, spinach, okay. Not necessarily what you immediately think you want in the icing of a cake, but supposedly you don't taste the spinach. Supposedly it's just the kind of green colour you get out of it.
I guess once you've kind of put it all through and mixed it through, the sugar probably overwhelms it.
Yeah, I think it's very sweet as well.
But just watching the knife go through it was amazing.
Yeah.
Just how cleanly it cut through. Well, cut through some of them. Yeah. Cut through proves, like, you know, example one. And of course John's, because John aced this challenge. Yeah. He did say during the kind of the shots that actually Genoese sponge is his favourite to make. So you kind of thought you might have had an advantage, but it was great fun to see him doing so well. And I loved his Hawaiian shirt. Yeah,
and he did it. Well, we'll get onto it, I guess. But he did a good thing later on as well. But yeah, no, definitely. And it looked. I thought his did look the best. I don't know if it stood up a little bit better than Prue's. I don't know if you know, when Prue cut through hers, it looked great, but there was a slight droop at the end. Don't know if you noticed.
No, soggy bottoms or soggy tops.
Soggy tops. Anyway, yes, I thought it was cool. I thought it was funny challenge because it's green and it's got spinach in it, and it's introduced us to something new.
Yeah, completely.
Who knew about Le Gâteau de Verre?
And it also kind of...
The French.
Well, yes, the French. Speaking of the French were put to the test this week because Manon, who was star baker in week 1, suddenly found herself, by the end of the technical challenge, at the bottom of the pile. So I think it was her tray bake wasn't quite right. It was okay.
Because I looked at it and I thought that looks really nice. It had the figs on top and the icing and everything, didn't it? But then they cut into it and it kind of like, instead of cutting, it just sort of like got pushed down like a sponge, and not a cake sponge, just a sponge. And then Paul said, "Oh, it's tough as old boots." I think that's what he said that about. I know you were like, "Yeah, maybe that doesn't look like so nice to eat," but it looked good anyway. But
she caused quite a storm on Twitter for 2 reasons. The first we'll get into is she cursed on screen and they had to bleep it out. Is that bleeping first for Bake Off? I'm not sure.
Not sure. I suspect we have had lower forms of swearing, but I don't think we've had. That might be the first F word, I think. So yeah, so it's controversial.
It was quite amusing though, because it really took Sandy aback. Nobody was expecting it. And
they kind of acted as if they were on live TV. Like they were almost like apologising for when a guest swears on a live show, which clearly it's going to get bleeped out or cut out. But bringing a bit of Gallic fire to the Bake Off tent. Completely.
Well, what's divided
with Anglo-Saxon words.
Exactly. What's divided Twitter about Mano-NO is that when we got to the final challenge of the day, which was of course the chocolate challenge, everybody had to get this chocolate collar around their cake. And Manon, by the time the timer was up, hadn't been able to get hers to set, so she left the acetate on. So that's the plastic that they kind of put the chocolate on and then clip around the cake. Yeah. So they get to Paul and Prue and to judging, and Paul says, "Oh, what's this doing still on?" And Manon looks a little bit, "Oh, it didn't work." And he's like, "Well, it's set now." And he throws it aside. And Prue praises her on how beautiful the chocolate looks.
They all thought it was great, didn't
they? Exactly. Now, some people say this isn't fair, that gave her kind of extra time to let it set, that the other bakers might not have had either. And if they'd done the same thing, would they have had the same advantage? Other people say, well, look, everybody was struggling. What did you expect her to do? Where do you fall, Paul?
I've got kind of mixed feelings about it, but I'm quite surprised that which way I'm leaning, actually. Because I do think, it's like, basically, everybody was struggling, weren't they? Trying to do chocolate, the chocolate collar is incredibly hard. You've got to temper chocolate, you've got to get it round there before it cools, or you've got to get it to cool, which in that 30+ degree heat is really, really hard. People were doing things with butter icing as well, which was melting. It was like anyone is going to struggle. And so, I don't know, I'm trying to think what I would have done in her place. And if I knew that taking that collar off, it was just going to go boom like that and collapse, I think I might have just left it and see what happens.
I guess,
because the first impression that you get of the cake is quite important. And I just think it was tough conditions. So, yeah, I'm kind of slightly towards Manon's side.
I guess you take your chances, don't you? Because it's not like the plastic is something somebody who's about to eat it can't see. So they can technically take it off. They're not going to accidentally ingest it. Whereas, say, if it had been, I don't know, like Rahul mentioned at one stage, he thought you might have left a toothpick in his cake. That's very different when you cut into a cake and get something that could possibly damage your insides. So maybe that's why they're a bit more lenient. I can see where people were coming from, definitely.
I certainly can, because it's like, it's not a level playing field. But then the sort of other side of that is, well, was she smart to go, okay, well, look, we've got this time between now and when they actually look at my cake. I'm going to give it an extra chance to set. Is that just clever? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think maybe it does.
We'll throw it out to you. Let us know in the comments below how you feel. Was it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Now, we know that rising above those temperatures was really difficult for everybody. But some people actually did manage to do it. They managed to excel.
Which is pretty amazing.
And we saw Paul Hollywood giving out what he claims, and I think you guys have checked this out, to be the first ever. As far as we
can tell from our research, it was the first ever showstopper handshake, and then the second.
Yeah, so first off, we had Rahul, who made this beautiful chocolate creation with all these intricate little details, and Paul called him round as if he'd been in trouble.
Yeah, and so talking about the toothpicks thing, so Rahul said later that he thought that there had been something, he'd left something in the cake or something gone in his mouth, Paul's mouth, and he was going to get told off. And I wasn't sure whether I bought that to start with, but having re-watched it, it's kind of, Paul is doing this, he's sort of tasting, almost as if he has got something in his mouth. So I think Rahul was genuinely worried. And then he gets the handshake. And you could sort of say, oh, Paul really overdid this with the massive long pause and then please come over here. But again, having watched it again, I kind of like the drama.
It was pretty cool.
It was kind of cool. I mean, it was cheesy, but it was cool, and he did deserve it, I think.
Yeah, and then like almost immediately after, Ruby comes up with her Jackson Pollock cake, her like intricately
cool.
designed, and she'd had such a bad week last week because she'd tried to do this big biscuit design that had fallen at the last hurdle, and I think we finally saw what Ruby can do when she gets it right. There was sort
of always, I thought even in the first week there were kind of indications that she probably was quite good on her day, but yeah, it was good to see her sort of finish something. And it looked that good because it was good.
Yeah, and then of course Paul handed out the second handshake, third handshake of the episode, and I think quite funnily afterwards when he was questioned about this, he said he's a bit disappointed with himself.
Yeah, I mean, and I think probably some viewers are, and it's kind of, so I mean, the argument goes, you know, you do something like that too often and it devalues it. And I think there is something in that. I suppose it's like, well, if he's set a level for himself and he's now going, well, these people are at that level, do I not give them anything? It's sort of, I suppose it's kind of like it's when you do your A levels, or when I was doing it anyway. It was kind of like how well you did was as a percentage of everybody else in your year. So it's kind of like you could have scored really well in one year, and the year before that would have got you an A, and this year it gets you a B. Maybe you need to look at it more like that. It's about the people that you're around, kind of thing. If the whole level's going up, the other side of it is, well, that was worth a handshake last season, it should be worth one now. I don't know. That's obviously the decision he made there. But.
Completely. I mean, Rahul, who was named Star Baker later in the episode, said he's actually a bit worried that he might have peaked too soon. Yeah,
well, I mean, it was good. It was good, but I mean, presumably every week in the Bake Off tent you get better, really, and well, who knows?
Who knows?
Hopefully not.
From Star Bakers to those who found themselves in trouble. So heading into that chocolate challenge, we had a few people who weren't in the best position. Karen had an okay tray bake, not a great technical. Terry's Eiffel Tower. Can we take a second to talk about poor old Terry's Eiffel Tower?
Well, look, right. First off, he always tries something different, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And it's something very. You know, I've forgotten the word. Was it me?
Innovative?
Innovative? No, ambitious.
Ambitious. That's the one.
So and you know, it was really ambitious, and he wasn't just doing a chocolate collar. He was doing sort of metal work of the Eiffel Tower, kind of wrapped around his cake and so on. And actually, I think it would have worked if it hadn't been for the temperatures.
Yeah, completely.
And so I really did feel for him because he had a plan. He had something new and ambitious. And the thing I think that stopped him was the unpredictable weather.
Yeah, completely. He did manage to get a collar around 2 layers of cake,
and he did, and it still looked pretty good. And they were quite, you know, the judges were sort of, well, we can tell what that is, and it's really good. So they were pretty positive about it.
Yeah, they weren't mad about the taste, but they were happy enough with the present, I think, what they got from it. They were quite pleased with his little ironwork and all that kind of stuff.
And I think, I mean, he looks like someone who's not ever going to play it safe. No. And I kind of like that, and I think viewers do, and I think Terry is he's definitely a fan favourite, isn't he?
I would love for him to kind of go on a journey at this stage. I feel like he started off with this kind of wobbly, scary, you know, kind of area where he's not too sure how he's doing. He put everybody's hearts on the line, you know. But somebody did tweet last night, you know, week 1 he attempts the biscuit face. Week 2 he tries to build the Eiffel Tower. By week 9 he'll have built a whole railroad.
Well, no, quite. And so what I'm thinking about Terry is, as long as he stays in, he continues to try and sort of push the envelope. But does he push it too far every week? So is he going to fail at something complicated every week, or is he going to get better and actually complete something and make it perfect?
I know.
Maybe he needs to rein himself in slightly. I think challenging yourself and doing something new is great, but like, let's see one of those things perfect.
I mean, I genuinely thought Terry was a goner last night until poor old Luke walked up with that lopsided cake with 1 chocolate collar.
Yeah. So it's pretty clear that Luke is not the most amazing baker we've ever had in the tent, and he probably did deserve to go on that basis, but I think he is a great loss.
Yeah.
Even after 2 weeks, I think he's a really nice guy, really warm, and I could sort of tell that, you know, not only was he sad to be going, but everyone else was sad that he was going, and I think he was a good presence in the tent as far as you can tell over a couple of weeks, so I think it's a shame.
I love this idea that he's a civil servant by day and like a techno DJ by night.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. And like, he had tried really hard, and I think it was really unfortunate that the whole thing just kind of collapsed and melted.
Yeah.
Why have they not learned how to air condition this tent?
I completely agree. I mean, that is possible. That is definitely possible. Portable air conditioning exists, and it's quite effective these days in the 21st century.
I think a few people on Twitter would agree with me on this. I don't know how you can fairly judge someone's baking.
I'll tell you what the problem might be, thinking about it. That might be an issue for sound.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably that.
True.
You can't have a load of those running in the background.
No, because you wouldn't hear them at all.
No, yeah. So that's probably it. So they've got to suffer.
So we've lost Luke. The heat has been turned up in the kitchen. And next week we're facing into what I'm sure will be Paul Hollywood's favourite, which is Bread Week.
Indeed.
Remember the bread lion? Yeah. Remember that gorgeous bread
lion? The bread lion. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh. So I thought you said remember the bread line. I thought I was supposed to say something at that point. No, the bread lion. Who could forget the bread lion?
Oh, Paul and his amazing bread lion.
Yeah, can that ever be topped? I don't know.
Topped? Will we find out
Terry
next week?
is the man to try something bigger than the bread lion, I think. Possibly pull it off, possibly fail, but I think he'll give it a go. He'll probably do a bread horse, won't he? He's a horse riding guy,
yeah,
horse fan.
He couldn't get his horse to trot in that first episode.
No. Can he get it to bake into a bit of bread?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Do you think Terry will make a bread horse? Do you think anyone can top the bread line? Don't be afraid to leave us a comment just below. And of course, if you're enjoying the Bake Off videos and like all the radiotimes.com content, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also check out radiotimes.com for all the latest Bake Off news, reviews, and of course all your entertainment news and reviews every day of the week. Until next week, our Bread Week recap. I've been Sarah Doran.
I've been Paul Jones.
Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye.
Bye.